The resonance wars, when stars become silent and ancient harmonies shatter the galaxy. The harmonic resonance that had governed the galaxy for millennia fell silent at 0347 Standard Galactic Time, and Commander Zara'Thek felt the absence like a physical wound in her chest, her bioluminescent facial markings, intricate spirals that traced her cheekbones and temples in patterns unique to her bloodline, flickered erratically as her enhanced nervous system struggled to process the cosmic void where the star song should have been. "Report," she commanded, her voice carrying the melodic undertones that marked her as Melodian nobility. The bridge of the crescendo's edge bustled with activity as her crew, a mixture of Melodians, cybernetic Nexari, and the occasional void-touched Umbron, worked frantically at their stations. Sub-Commander Velsarin, his own markings pulsing a worried blue-green, turned from the sensor array. "Sector 7 Alpha has gone completely dark, Commander. No stellar radiation, no gravitational signatures. It's as if the stars simply stopped existing." Zara'Thek moved to the main display, her ceremonial armor, a masterwork of Melodian craftsmanship that seemed to sing with each movement, catching the emergency lighting. The holographic star map showed a growing void, a sphere of absolute nothingness that had already consumed 3 solar systems. "How many inhabited worlds?" 14 billion souls, Commander, all gone. The weight of those numbers settled on her shoulders like a mantle of lead. In her 67 years of service to the Melodian Empire, she had witnessed the resonance wars between her people and the machine logic Nexari collective, had survived the Umbron shadow incursions, and had even negotiated with the enigmatic Crystarch enclaves. But nothing had prepared her for this, the systematic erasure of reality itself. "Sir," Communications Officer Trill Nex interrupted, her voice tight with concern, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the High Resonance Council. They're ordering all fleet commanders to return to Melodia Prime immediately." Zara'Thek's primary eyes narrowed while her secondary pair, smaller organs that perceived harmonic frequencies, focused on the tactical display. Something felt wrong about this timing. "Delay that transmission. Tell them we're investigating anomalous readings." "Commander," Velsarin approached, his voice low. "That's a direct order from the High Council." "I know what I heard, Sub-Commander." She studied the void on the display, noting how it seemed to pulse with its own anti-rhythm. "But I also know that retreat isn't going to solve this. If we don't understand what's causing the silencing, nowhere will be safe." Before Velsarin could respond, the ship's proximity alarm screamed to life. On the display, 3 vessels materialized from Quantum Fold, sleek, angular ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Umbron Shadow Fleet. "Weapons hot," Zara'Thek ordered. But as the Umbron ships approached, something unprecedented happened. Instead of attacking, they broadcast on the ancient diplomatic frequency, a channel that hadn't been used since the original Treaty of Silent Stars 3 centuries ago. "Melodian vessel." The voice that emerged from the speakers was like whispered silk over broken glass. Unmistakably Umbron. "We request parley. The Shadow Council has information regarding the stellar void phenomenon." Zara'Thek felt her crew's tension spike. The Umbrani were masters of deception, their very existence tied to the manipulation of shadow and void. They were also, in many ways, the antithesis of everything Melodian. Where her people were creatures of light and sound, the Umbrani existed in the spaces between, feeding on darkness and silence. "This could be a trap," Velsarin warned. "Everything could be a trap," she replied. But her harmonic intuition, a sense developed over decades of command, suggested otherwise. "Open a channel." The holographic display shimmered, and the image of an Umbron appeared. Where Melodians were tall and graceful with their luminescent markings, this being was compact and seemed to shift slightly, even while standing still. Most unsettling were its eyes, completely black, like looking into the void between stars. "I am Whisper Neth of the Third Shadow," the being said, its voice somehow managing to convey both respect and barely contained urgency. "We must speak, Songbearer. The silence spreads, and even we who dwell in darkness fear what comes." Songbearer. Zara'Thek felt a chill run through her bioelectric system. That was an ancient title, one that predated the current empire by millennia. How did this Umbron know it, and why use it now? "Speak your piece, Shadow Walker," she replied, using the equally ancient form of address. "What you call the stellar void, we know as the unhearing. It is not a natural phenomenon, but a weapon. One that our combined archives suggest was used in the time before memory. Our scholars believe it targets the fundamental resonance that binds matter and energy together." "Why should I trust anything you say?" Zara'Thek asked, though her tactical mind was already processing the implications. Your people have been trying to expand your shadow territories for centuries. Because Songbearer, the unhearing does not discriminate. It will consume shadow and light alike. Our deep void monitoring stations detected its origin point, a region of space that all our species have avoided since the first star maps were drawn. Whisperneth paused, and for a moment its form seemed to solidify, becoming more corporeal. The forbidden resonance, the place where the first music died. Zara'Thek felt her facial markings pulse bright gold, a sign of shock she couldn't suppress. The forbidden resonance was more than legend. It was the mythical location where, according to Melodian sacred texts, their ancestors had committed some great sin against the cosmic harmony. It was said to be the source of all discord in the galaxy. You're suggesting someone has weaponized the forbidden resonance? We are suggesting that someone has awakened it. And unless the ancient harmonies can be restored, the unhearing will continue to spread until all existence falls silent forever. Before Zara'Thek could respond, another proximity alarm sounded. This time, the approaching vessel was massive, a geometric construct of crystalline formations that seemed to bend space around itself. A Crystarch Enclave ship. This is getting complicated, Velsarin muttered. The Crystarch communication came through in harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull itself. Unity requires convergence. The pattern shows fracture points. Ancient errors demand correction. Zara'Thek rubbed her temples, feeling the beginning of a harmonic headache. The Crystarchs were perhaps the oldest sentient species in the galaxy, their consciousness existing partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that other species couldn't even perceive. They spoke in riddles and dealt in cosmic mathematics that few could understand. Translation, please, she requested of her AI systems. The Crystarch entity appears to be confirming the Umbron's information, Commander. It's suggesting that the current crisis is the result of some ancient action that must be corrected. Commander, Communications Officer Trillnex interrupted again. I'm now receiving emergency broadcasts from across the galaxy. The void has appeared simultaneously in 17 different sectors. It's not spreading from a single point, it's manifesting everywhere at once. The implications hit Zara'Thek like a physical blow. If the phenomenon was appearing randomly across the galaxy, it wasn't being generated from a single source. It was somehow connected to the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Whisperneth, she addressed the Umbron directly. You mentioned combined archives. What aren't you telling me? The shadow being's form flickered, a sign of what might have been embarrassment in its species. The archives are not complete. Sections were deliberately obscured by all our peoples in the aftermath of the first silence. But what remains suggests that your ancestors, mine and the Crystarchs, were once unified. Unified how? As one species. Before the great sundering that created our different evolutionary paths. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Zara'Thek felt her worldview shifting like tectonic plates. Everything she had been taught about the ancient rivalries between the species, the fundamental differences that made them incompatible, the very foundation of galactic politics, all of it called into question by a handful of words. You're saying we're all the same species? Were, the Crystarch's harmonic voice corrected. Division choice created evolution paths. Original unity maintained harmony resonance. Current crisis indicates harmony failure reaching critical threshold. Whisperneth's form solidified further as it leaned forward. The weapon that's causing the unhearing, we believe it was created as a failsafe. If the original species could never reunite, if the discord between the evolutionary branches became too great, it would trigger the return of the first silence. A universal reset. A reset to what? To nothing. Complete cosmic entropy. The end of all organized matter and energy. Zara'Thek closed her eyes and reached out with her harmonic senses, trying to feel the shape of the crisis. What she found chilled her to her core. The absence wasn't random, it was growing stronger, and she could sense its hunger. It wanted to devour not just matter and energy, but the very concept of existence itself. How long do we have? Based on the expansion rate, Velsarin answered, consulting his instruments. Approximately 72 standard hours before the void zones begin to overlap and create cascading failures in spacetime. 3 days to save the galaxy. Zara'Thek had faced impossible odds before, but this was beyond anything in her experience. She needed more information, and that meant making a decision that could cost her everything, including her career and possibly her life. Whisperneth, I'm going to do something that goes against every instinct I have as a Melodian commander. I'm going to trust you, but I need more than theories and ancient legends. I need proof. The proof lies in the forbidden resonance itself. But the journey there will require more than trust. It will require us to work together in ways our species haven't attempted in millennia. And if you're wrong, if this is some elaborate Umbran deception, then we all die together when the universe falls silent. Zara'Thek looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were scared, confused, but still looking to her for leadership. In their eyes, she saw the trust that had been built over years of service together. She also saw the weight of expectation that came with command. The burden of making decisions that would affect not just their lives, but potentially all life in the galaxy. "Commander," Trilneck spoke up hesitantly, "I'm still receiving orders from the High Resonance Council. They're demanding an immediate response." "Tell them!" Zara'Thek paused, knowing that her next words would irrevocably change her relationship with her own government. "Tell them that I'm pursuing a lead that could resolve the crisis, but I need operational autonomy to do it." "Sir, they're not going to accept that." "Then tell them that Commander Zara'Thek is invoking the ancient right of deep harmony, the authority to act beyond normal chain of command when the survival of all Melodian life is at stake." Velsaren's eyes widened. The ancient right hadn't been invoked in over 400 years. It was a desperate measure that gave a commander absolute authority, but also made them personally responsible for the consequences. If she was wrong, she would face not just court-martial, but exile from Melodian space forever. "Whisper, Neth. Can your ships guide us to the forbidden resonance? We can navigate the shadow paths, yes. But Songbearer, you must understand, the journey itself may change us. The closer we get to the source of the first silence, the more we will be exposed to the original disharmony that sundered our species." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we may begin to remember what we chose to forget." The Crystarch ship pulsed with complex harmonics. Memory pain brings understanding growth. Choice responsibility cannot be avoided, eternal. Zara'Thek felt the weight of cosmic history settling on her shoulders. Every instinct told her to follow protocol, to return to Melodia Prime and let the High Council handle the crisis through official channels. But her harmonic intuition, the same sense that had guided her through decades of command decisions, was screaming that conventional approaches wouldn't work here. "All right," she said finally. "We go to the forbidden resonance, but we do this as equals, not as representatives of our respective governments. The moment any of you try to deceive or betray the others, this alliance is over." "Agreed," Whisper Neth replied. "Harmony bond accepted," the Crystarch added. "Commander!" Velsaren stepped closer, his voice low. "Are you sure about this? We'll be operating completely outside the chain of command, with enemies who could turn on us at any moment." Zara'Thek looked at the display showing the expanding voids, then at the faces of her crew. She thought about the 14 billion souls already lost, and the trillions more who would die if they failed to act. "No, I'm not sure, but I'm certain that doing nothing isn't an option." Over the next 6 hours, as their small fleet made its way toward the galactic rim following shadow paths that existed between normal space, Zara'Thek found herself in the strange position of learning to work with beings she had considered enemies her entire career. The Umbran, she discovered, were not the mindless shadow feeders of Melodian propaganda. Whisper Neth was a scholar and philosopher, with a deep understanding of cosmic mechanics that complemented her own tactical knowledge. Its people had evolved to survive in the dark spaces between stars, developing technology that could manipulate gravitational fields and quantum probabilities. The Crystarch entity, which introduced itself through harmonics that roughly translated to facet of eternal seeking, was even more fascinating. Its consciousness existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes, allowing it to perceive patterns and connections that linear thinking species missed entirely. As they traveled, sharing data and theories, Zara'Thek began to understand the scope of what they were dealing with. The forbidden resonance wasn't just a location. It was a wound in reality itself, a place where the fabric of space-time had been deliberately damaged in some ancient catastrophe. "The archives speak of a great experiment," Whisper Neth explained as they shared information in the Crescendo's Edges conference room. "Our ancestors, before the sundering, attempted to create a universal harmony, a resonance frequency that would unite all matter and consciousness in perfect synchronization. Unity attempt failed," Facet of Eternal Seeking added, its crystalline form pulsing with sad colors. "Harmony force too great. Reality structure could not contain perfect resonance. So they shattered it," Zara'Thek concluded, "broke the unity to prevent complete cosmic collapse. But in doing so, they created the 3 paths, light, shadow, and crystal. each carrying a fragment of the original harmony, but none complete enough to maintain universal stability. And now? Now the failsafe has activated. The universe is trying to return to the pre-experiment state, absolute silence. No organized matter or energy, no consciousness to observe or create disharmony. Zara'Thek felt a chill run through her bioelectric systems. Unless we can somehow restore the original harmony without triggering the same catastrophic resonance that destroyed it the first time. Correct. But to do that, we need to understand exactly what our ancestors did and why it failed. The answers lie in the forbidden resonance itself, Whisperneth said. But Songbearer, I must warn you again. Approaching that place will awaken genetic memories that were deliberately suppressed. We may remember not just what happened, but what we felt about it. The guilt, the fear, the desperate choice to sacrifice unity for survival. Memory pain is growth price, Facet of Eternal Seeking agreed. Truth understanding requires courage sacrifice. As if summoned by their conversation, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. On the main display, space itself seemed to be writhing. Stars were visible, but they appeared to be moving in patterns that hurt to look at directly. We're approaching the edge of the forbidden resonance, Navigation Officer Thera reported, her voice tight with strain. Sensors are picking up massive gravitational anomalies and what appears to be temporal distortion. Visual confirmation, Zara'Thek ordered. The main screen shifted to show what lay ahead, and collective gasps filled the bridge. It wasn't a region of space so much as a hole in reality. A spherical zone where normal physical laws seemed to have broken down completely. Matter existed in impossible configurations. Light moved in spirals and loops, and at the center, by the first song, Velsarin whispered, at the center was a structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was part crystalline formation, part shadow construction, and part something that resembled Melodian harmonic architecture. But it was all wrong, twisted and broken, as if someone had tried to force 3 different types of existence into a single form and failed catastrophically. The original resonance chamber, Whisperneth said, its voice filled with something that might have been awe or terror, where our ancestors tried to unite the 3 paths into one. It's beautiful, Trillneck said softly, and Zara'Thek realized with shock that her communications officer was crying. I can almost hear music. Very faint, but... Everyone step back from the displays, Zara'Thek ordered sharply. The harmonic resonance is affecting your nervous systems. We need shielding before we go any closer. But even as she said it, she could feel it too. A pull, like coming home after a long journey. Her facial markings were glowing brighter than they ever had before, and she could sense similar reactions from both Whisperneth and Facet of Eternal Seeking. Commander! Velsarin's voice sounded strange, distant. I'm remembering things that can't be my memories. I see us working together, all of us, building something beautiful, something that was supposed to bring peace to the entire galaxy. Shared memory awakening, Facet of Eternal Seeking confirmed. Genetic archive activation beginning. Caution advised. Zara'Thek forced herself to focus on the immediate tactical situation, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. Images were flashing through her mind, memories that felt both alien and deeply familiar. She saw vast construction projects involving all 3 species working in perfect harmony. She saw the discovery of harmonic frequencies that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. And she saw the growing excitement and ambition that led to the fatal experiment. We need to get closer, she heard herself saying, though she wasn't sure she'd made a conscious decision to speak. The answers are in there. Commander, Whisperneth's voice was strained, I'm beginning to remember why this place was forbidden. The closer we get, the more we'll recall. And what we recall, it may be too much to bear. What do you mean? I mean, we didn't just accidentally create a cosmic catastrophe. We chose to. We knew what the risks were, and we decided that the potential rewards were worth gambling with the existence of the universe itself. The weight of that revelation hit the bridge like a physical blow. Around her, Zara'Thek could see her crew struggling with awakening memories that weren't quite their own, but felt deeply personal nonetheless. Are you saying our ancestors were responsible for nearly destroying the universe? Responsible word insufficient, Facet of Eternal Seeking replied. Choice consequence extends beyond simple responsibility. We then chose knowledge over wisdom, unity over diversity, perfection over natural balance. And now the universe is trying to correct our mistake by returning to absolute silence. Unless we can find another way, Whisperneth said. Unless we can somehow restore harmony without repeating the same errors. Zara'Thek closed her eyes and reached out with her harmonic senses. trying to feel the shape of the crisis more clearly. What she found was worse than she had imagined. The stellar voids weren't random, they were following a pattern, a sequence that was systematically unraveling the cosmic structure from its foundations upward. How much time do we have left? 41 hours and 17 minutes, Velsarin reported, consulting sensors that were now displaying readings that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional physics. Then we go in. Whatever the cost, whatever we have to remember or face, we go in and find a solution. Commander, Trilneck spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm receiving transmissions from all across the galaxy. The panic is spreading faster than the voids themselves. Governments are falling as people realize their technology can't protect them from this. Some species are already talking about mass suicide rather than waiting for the end. All the more reason to succeed, Zara'Thek replied, though she could feel doubt gnawing at her resolve. Take us in. Full harmonic shielding, and everyone prepare for the possibility that we might not be the same people when we come out of this. As their small fleet penetrated deeper into the forbidden resonance, reality became increasingly unstable around them. Time moved in fits and starts, space folded in on itself. And the memories, the terrible, beautiful, tragic memories, came flooding back with increasing intensity. Zara'Thek remembered being young, part of a species that existed as a unity of light, shadow, and crystal. She remembered the discovery of the universal harmonic, a frequency that could theoretically synchronize all matter and consciousness in perfect unity. She remembered the debates, the warnings from the cautious members of their society, and the overwhelming desire to achieve something that had never been attempted before. She remembered the day they activated the original resonance chamber. The memory hit her like a physical blow, so intense that she had to grip the arms of her command chair to keep from falling. Around her, she could see her crew experiencing similar revelations. They had succeeded. For one perfect, terrible moment, they had achieved universal harmony. Every atom in the galaxy had sung in perfect synchronization. Every consciousness had been united in a single, transcendent awareness. They had become, briefly, what they had always dreamed of becoming, truly one with the universe. And then it had all started to collapse. The harmonic resonance was too perfect, too complete. It didn't allow for the natural chaos and diversity that made life possible. Stars began to burn out as their nuclear processes became too synchronized to sustain fusion. Planets stopped rotating as their gravitational fields harmonized into static patterns. Consciousness itself began to fade as individual thought became impossible within the universal unity. In desperation, their ancestors had shattered the resonance, breaking their species into 3 evolutionary paths and scattering the fragments of the universal harmonic across the galaxy. It was the only way to prevent the complete dissolution of reality. But in doing so, they had created the current crisis. The broken harmony had been unstable from the beginning, slowly degrading over millions of years. And now, finally, it was failing entirely. We created our own nemesis, Zara'Thek whispered, the full weight of ancient guilt settling on her consciousness. We broke the universe trying to perfect it, and now it's trying to heal itself by returning to silence. But we also created the solution, Whisperneth replied, its form now more solid and defined as they approached the original resonance chamber. The 3 paths weren't just random divisions. They were carefully designed to each carry a piece of the solution. Solution pieces require integration, facet of eternal seeking added, but integration method must avoid original error. What do you mean? The original resonance was too perfect, Whisperneth explained. It tried to impose absolute harmony on a universe that thrives on controlled chaos. But what if, instead of creating perfect unity, we created perfect balance? Balance between order and chaos, unity and diversity, harmony and discord. Exactly. The 3 paths each represent a different aspect of that balance. Melodians embody structured harmony, music and light that follows patterns but allows for improvisation. Umbrani represent necessary discord, the spaces between notes that make music possible, the darkness that gives meaning to light. And Christarks represent eternal perspective, facet of eternal seeking completed, time-scale awareness that prevents short-term solutions from creating long-term catastrophes. Zara'Thek felt pieces of an ancient puzzle clicking into place in her mind. So the solution isn't to recreate the original resonance, but to create something new, a harmony that includes discord, a unity that celebrates diversity. But it has to be done from within the original resonance chamber itself, Whisperneth said. That's the only place where the 3 paths can be safely integrated without causing the same catastrophic resonance that nearly destroyed the universe the first time. And if we're wrong? Then we die, along with everything else in the universe, but at least we die trying to fix the mistake our ancestors made. As they approached the twisted structure at the heart of the forbidden resonance, Zara'Thek felt the full weight of cosmic history pressing down on her. She was about to attempt something that the greatest minds of the ancient unified species had failed to achieve: a harmony that preserved both unity and diversity, order and chaos, existence and the possibility of non-existence. "All ships prepare for docking," she ordered. "We're going in." The original resonance chamber was unlike anything in her experience. As soon as they stepped inside, Zara'Thek felt her consciousness expanding, touching the minds of her companions in ways that should have been impossible. She could feel Whisperneth's deep understanding of quantum probabilities and void space mechanics. She could sense Facet of Eternal Seeking's multidimensional awareness of cosmic patterns. And underneath it all, she could feel the broken harmony of the ancient experiment, still trying to achieve the perfect unity that had nearly destroyed everything. "The control systems are still active," Velsarin reported, his voice filled with wonder and terror. "After all this time, the chamber is still trying to complete the original experiment." That's why the failsafe activated, Zara'Thek realized. The system detected that the harmony was degrading and tried to return everything to the pre-experiment state, rather than risk another cascade failure. "But we can override it," Whisperneth said, moving to what appeared to be a control interface made of crystallized shadow. "If we work together, using all three harmonic paths simultaneously." "Integration risk remains," Facet of Eternal Seeking warned. "Consciousness merger may be permanent. Individual identity could be lost in unity achievement." Zara'Thek looked at her companions, a shadow being she had been taught to consider an enemy, and a crystal entity whose thought processes she barely understood. She thought about the trillions of lives hanging in the balance, the civilizations that would never exist if they failed, the music and art and love that would be lost forever if the universe returned to silence. "Then we take that risk," she said. "But we do it as individuals choosing to work together, not as fragments being forced into unity." They approached the central control matrix together, each placing their hands on interfaces designed for their specific evolutionary path. As soon as contact was made, Zara'Thek felt her consciousness expand beyond anything she had ever experienced. She was still herself, but she was also part of something greater. She could feel the harmonic patterns that governed stellar fusion, the quantum fluctuations that allowed matter to exist, the gravitational waves that carried information across cosmic distances. She could sense the failing resonance that was causing stars to fall silent, and she could see the mathematical elegance of the solution they needed to implement. It wasn't about creating perfect harmony, it was about creating sustainable balance, a cosmic rhythm that included both beats and rests, melodies and silence, order and chaos, in proportions that allowed for infinite variation within stable patterns. Working together, their three consciousness types began to weave a new universal harmonic. Where the original had sought to eliminate all discord, this new resonance embraced controlled discord as an essential element. Where the original had tried to unify all consciousness into a single awareness, this new harmony celebrated the diversity of individual perspectives while allowing for voluntary connection. It was the most difficult thing Zara'Thek had ever attempted. Every instinct trained by millions of years of evolution told her to preserve her individual identity, to resist the merger with alien consciousness types, but she forced herself to remain open, to trust in the balance they were creating together. The new harmony began to propagate outward from the original resonance chamber, racing across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds. Where it touched the expanding voids, space-time began to heal itself. Stars reignited, but with a new stability that prevented the cascade failures of the original experiment. The fail-safe systems detected the restored balance and began shutting down the entropy generators. But success came at a cost. As the new universal harmonic established itself, Zara'Thek felt parts of her consciousness permanently merging with her companions. She would never again be purely Melodian. She now carried within herself fragments of Umbron void sense and Crystarch multidimensional awareness. Looking at Whisperneth and Facet of Eternal Seeking, she could see similar changes in them. They were no longer pure representatives of their species, but something new. Beings who embodied the successful integration of the three paths while maintaining their essential individual characteristics. "It's done," she said, though her voice now carried harmonic undertones that hadn't been there before, along with subtle shadow resonances and crystal clarity that marked her transformation. "But the work is just beginning," Whisperneth replied. its form now more substantial and defined, touched with traces of light and crystalline structure. Integration success requires ongoing maintenance, facet of eternal seeking added, its communication now including emotional overtones and shadow depths that it had never possessed before. They had saved the universe, but in doing so, they had also fundamentally changed themselves, and by extension, the relationship between their three species. The ancient rivalries and misunderstandings that had defined galactic politics for millennia would no longer be possible, not when individuals from all three species now carried aspects of the others within themselves. As they prepared to return to their respective fleets and begin the long process of explaining what had happened, Zara'Thek felt a profound sense of completion. The guilt and trauma that had haunted their species' genetic memory for millions of years was finally beginning to heal. The universe was no longer silent. Instead, it sang with a new harmony, imperfect, chaotic, beautiful, and sustainable. A song that celebrated both unity and diversity, order and freedom, existence, and the eternal possibility of becoming something greater. And at the heart of that song, three friends who had once been enemies worked together to ensure that the music would never end.